biggest misconceptions about astrology and our natal charts is that it's based on just our personality and, you know, how we identify with our emotions, when in true reality, it's our entire ancestral energy. It's based on what our parents were going through before and after our conception, and through that we've inherited our weaknesses, our strengths, and our overall astrological code based on that connection. And it's the portal that got us here. So when we look at our natal chart based on just all, like, giving ourselves all the power and just this is just defining our own lives without any other connection, it puts us in our position where we don't really fully evolve and break the karmas in our chart. Because if you're not looking at it from an ancestral point of view, where this is something that I need to look on based on how my mother and my father experienced it, and how I've now am experiencing the same themes, and relating a lot to my parents as I get older, then there's something that I really need to figure out where we have patterns and where this is more of a history. So when you're looking at your natal chart, it's best to look at it as more as a medical record. Because as a medical record, when you're going to, you know, a physician or a doctor's office, they more so tell you that this is what you're susceptible to. Not necessarily this is going to define and this is definite, but you are more susceptible to these themes and causes and diseases and whatever the case may be because of the lineage that you come from. And that's how you got to look at your natal chart. Because even if you look at like groups of families, you'll see certain placements that are repeating, and that should be where you pinpoint to be like, all right, this is one of the core things in our family that we need to balance out, work on, to really get us to the next level and to really end, you know, repeating patterns here, especially for the next generations. So it's very important for you to look at your natal chart in a way where it's a medical record and the energy that you're susceptible to. Because we can go up and down about what our parents did and what we don't understand about them and what makes them wrong and bad. And then we grow up and end up doing the same things. You know how many times I had to call my mother and let her know that, oh, Ma, I understand now. Oh, I get it. Because once you look at your natal chart based on this is what my parents were going through at the moment, and this is how they identified this conception, the portal that got me here. So I am part of this cause and effect, and it will be part of my life as well. And even when you're looking at your natal chart and your placements, this is how you're going to identify with your parent and find closure through those placements. Like example, I'm Platonic, I'm Scorpio. And I think one of my biggest things for me and my mother and my parents is them understanding that they also came from, you know, the discord and just the spaces of where outsiders didn't feel like they were the best match. And that they should meddle into my life and my personal life as well by being very picky and choosy and judgmental based on who I want to date and who I want to associate with. They should actually build more understanding. And that's one of the biggest breakthroughs that I had with my mother, was the fact that she wasn't perfect in picking the right partner as well. And she should open up the conversation with me and letting me know that I'm safe and not always picking the right partners as well. And with my daughter being a Scorpio, meaning that it's a double effect. Because now my mother has to look at the fact that her granddaughter is the same sign as her daughter. So the energy really needed to be balanced out. And I know in my life, I have to really be conscious with my daughter on not meddling in her intimate and personal relationships, and also being way more educating and giving her more of that financial, emotional, resourceful sense of security. Because my mother's even a Leo. I'm a Scorpio. My daughter's a Scorpio. We're all three fixed in one lineage. Like, that's something you would want to pinpoint. And looking at that in your own family's chart, where you guys have energies that are repeating. Because that's important. Now, I wrote some things down. Oh, the top one fell. So I wrote some things down, just so we get a better, like I could just get a better overview of things. So When you're looking at your natal chart, look at it as a portal that got you here. And some of us come through harsh portals, Martian, Saturn, Plutonic portals. And you have to be conscious of the energy that you're coming into this world in. It's best you identify with that energy so you don't gaslight yourself, let alone other people gaslighting you. Let's not try to do it to ourselves and put ourselves in a space where we're supposed to walk in this love and light when our entire life has not been love and life, and our even our conception has malefic placements: Mars, Uranus, Pluto, Saturn. So you have to be very conscious of what is going to be the constant themes and the things that we confront in our chart. So being conscious of that in general. What is your overall energy and what portal got you here? And then understanding how that connects to your parents. Because if your parent is having a child during a Plutonic Saturn period in their life, can we really blame them for not being as available? And that's really why I do the charts. Just to give our parents grace so our children can give us grace. Because I hope my child gives me the grace. Because that's my mom's favorite thing that she loves to say. You shall feel what goes around comes around. You're going to understand exactly what you said to me. So, very important with that. Now, another thing looking at in your chart, your natal chart, just so you can see like the theme of why we need to look at it as more as an ancestral energy. There, you can see in certain families where there's a sign that's repeating. Like where there's energy that doubles, triples, like a full house of mutables, a full house of cardinals, a full house of Leos, a full house of Capricorns, a full house of Aries, Libras. That's something that needs to be pinpointed in the chart to see, why does this keep repeating? What do we need to work on? Because these can also bring medical record back to that perspective, where we can pinpoint an issue in our family so we can warn one another. So it doesn't come off like random. Especially if something is obviously keeps repeating. So looking at it in that space as well. Now, in Vedic astrology, which is one of the things I really connect with, I connected with Vedic astrology very early. I just like the overall ancestral, ancient theme that they work with. It hasn't failed me yet in how I do my sessions. And it gives way more of an impact than just talking about it based on a personality thing. When you speak on ancestral energy, it opens up so much closure in my sessions. So, sun is connected to father, and Vedic astrology looks at it on ancestral energy, where they connect the sun to the father, and what's happening before and after the conception. So this is when you're looking at your sun placement, unless mother is closely aspected to the sun, where she's like the same sign, or she trines it, sextiles it, opposes it, a major aspect to it. It'll be part of her story as well. But the sun usually identifies with the father, what he's going before and after the conception. And just looking at that, you can break so much of wherever you feel like there's the guarded energy, blockages with this parent, just by understanding their story and finding the key words around what your sun placement identifies with. Like, I'm Scorpio, so understanding that my dad went through a very platonic life and has still gone through very platonic things in his life made me understand why I related to men who have very platonic backgrounds. That's another thing too. It rules our great grandfather to our great grandson, so overall men in our life. And it also rules how you identify with your masculinity and how you identify with men in your life. Now, I know we're in a time where there's, pronouns and spaces, but this is a theme of Asian astrology. So let's stay on the same page in a way here when it comes to man, masculinity, femininity, not the other stuff. So when I say the other stuff, just not making it into, because if we go into astrology, to be honest, we're all fluid. And astrology pinpoints that energy just as closely. Because if you're meeting a woman or born female, who has fire energy, she might identify with more masculine placements because that's a masculine energy. So astrology pinpoints it perfectly in spaces where it can bring a lot of practicality to that understanding. But yes, the sun energy rules the father. The overall great grandfather to great grandson, and how we identify with our masculine energy. The moon rules our mother. It rules our great grandmother to our great granddaughter. It indicates the type of nurturing that we were giving and the type of nurturing that we will give as well. And that's another thing I want us to be very conscious of when it comes to our moon. Because we could go around on this parade of how we can't stand our mother, she's the worst, blah, 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 and not taking away from that. But there's high probability, especially when you're looking at your natal chart, that you can raise your children with the same tendencies. So it's best you unpack this, especially Saturn moons. Moons that have Saturn aspects, who can go through spaces where they don't even want children. And if they don't even come to that understanding yet and have children, they can repeat a lot of that detachment, negligence, just spaces where they feel like I'm just as away from my children the way my mother was. So Saturn has to be careful, Aquarius, Capricorn, Libra placements, when it comes to how they're dealing with their children. And if you have children in those signs as well. There's a detachment. Also, it doesn't even have to be negative. This could be spaces where it's just you're a career-driven mother. You're just the spaces where you really need to identify first with your path. And you had children in ways where, you didn't have the best mentors, the best guidance. But so you can unpack it as you want, but I've seen this a lot with Capricorn energies, Saturn, Aquarius, where they have this difficult placement with their parent and then end up having the same difficult placement with their children. And if they have children, those signs as well. So it's very, very important when you're looking at your natal chart that you look at it in ways where I'm unpacking a lot of the history of what my parents created me in so I could better understand how to give that energy grace, closure, and also realize in myself where these energies are where these energies are obvious, propelling, moving towards that kind of energy there. Because it's helped me in so many ways. Just by looking at like, wow, I was very platonic to my family. And that's how they treated me in a very platonic way. I was probably a waking memory of just trauma to them. Because that's what I did growing up. I really would be like, we have to talk about the state of this household. Like, I was just, like, my brothers would call me a bully. Because I was just like, you know what? I don't know what the hell's going down here, but I need to figure it out. And we need to talk about why it's this house. We need therapy. And every other weekend, I was opening up conversations of transformation. And if you're a Scorpio, and you know a Scorpio, you know that's not always a positive and a calm way that we express that. Sometimes it's hell. Fiery of the energy. Fire energy. So just that conscious there of really looking at it in that way. All right. So now the rising sign. The rising sign is how your parents came together, how they got along, how they projected their relationship to the world. And this is now how you will connect with your partnerships. It's the same thing when people are like, I only know how to date based on how my parents dated. Or I'm starting to act like my mom in this relationship, or my dad in this relationship, or I've taken on my parents' characteristics on how they partnered up. And that's how you're going to look at your rising. And just with looking at the key themes of the rising will let you know how the world saw your parents and how you identified with their connection on the surface level. The sun and the moon is unconscious. So this is the energy that, we go towards when we start to get more understanding of our parents. But the rising is always the most conscious house. So it's what we see on the surface. And this is what the world sees on the surface for you as well. Your outer shell. And just with my Leo, like example with me, with having Leo energy on the rising, I square my sun and I square my moon. So I'm a Scorpio sun, Taurus moon, Leo rising. When I tell you, on the surface, I could understand why certain people will see my parents as goals. I even project the same thing. I'll go outside and I'll literally be like, hey, we leave our bullshit at home. When we go outside, we fucking we're gonna do what it do. We're gonna put some respect on this shit. And while it's great and it's commendable, it's dishonest. Cause then you go home and just like in my own life and maybe other Scorpios and Taurus dynamics can understand this, Pluto, Mars. How once we get home it was like fucking World War III in the house. And that's just something I'm even learning to overcome myself, that it's okay to have a bad day. And it's okay to let people know that you're having a bad day. And it's okay to know that in relationships, there will be bad days. In life, there will be bad days. Because your Leo energy, my Leo energy, and just having fire energy, you can try to stay away from all that Debbie Downer stuff. Like Sagittarius, Aries, Leo, they can be in spaces where they really can't afford to be sad. Because once they do, it becomes overwhelming. So they stay in spaces where they're just more distracted from their frustrations until they have to deal with it head on. But when you're more water and you're more earth, you can actually struggle with that part, learning how to be more distracted and find more happiness and find more escapism, and realizing that it's better to laugh sometimes and just do what you gotta do. Because these placements will make you so reflective on things. So, and that's what I battle with. Being so reflective with my water energy, my earth energy, but also having this demeanor where it's like, I can't stay here. I really gotta just, and even since it's my rising, just, and my mom's a Leo, like there was just never really a real, we didn't really have to sit down on what really hurts us. My mom really just puts me in a place where I can't afford to be sad. Like I gotta get through it, even though it's obvious things going on here that were platonic. And that just lets you know just the whole story and just how your parents sit in your chart. That's important as well. Just in spaces where you can just see where your parents sit in your life and how they identify with you, and doing it in your own chart, in your own children's charts, and where they sit and where you sit in their world and they sit in your world. And even looking at, like, another important thing is when you put your children in order and seeing how the relationship changes. Let it be with a blended family, let it be with the same father and the same mother, and the child, each child still has their own experience of understanding their parents. And even without understanding even without their voices yet and their opinions yet, just looking at those placements and looking at it authentically, not in a romanticized way, and you could already see, wow, okay, this is what I was going through, this is what dad was going through, this is what mom was going through, this is what we were happening in our life. And if I look at it in a way where I'm like, all right, this now becomes my child's strengths, weaknesses, and their portal that got them here, I'm just going to look at it. What is the negative parts of this placement? What's the positive parts of this placement? In each planet that's associated with a sign, you look at the yin and yang, the good and bad, and you help your child understand it based on you looking at it from your story. Because that's really what they're looking at, your story. So, Scorpio, how did Scorpio affect my life? Oh, in this way. What is platonic themes that I've experienced in my life? Okay, Ava's a Scorpio. Ava's susceptible to go through these similar things in her life. So how am I gonna help her with the positive and the negative parts, so she could at least be more prepared than I was, get more closer to the finish line than I do? than I did. That's what it's about, right? If we have kids, we're passing them the baton. And many times we can have children that have so much connection to us that it's easier to resonate with them. And that's when you'll find certain parents who have favorites because they're aspecting that child in a great way, nicely. But it also shows they and that child have a specific mission, specific understanding. And on a bigger scheme, it even shows that the mother and father, the parents, had a specific mission, understanding to those spaces. And it's just important to look at it that way, because it'll make more sense to putting it all on our shoulders. Like why did I choose this life? Well, you didn't, and you did. You chose the energy, and your parents created the environment for you. Look at it in that way. I wanted to come in here and do very platonic things. And based on the level of the platonic things I wanted to do, my family, my parents created a very platonic environment for me to build that. And think about it like this. If I have the wisdom that you think I have, and I'm basing that on a lot of my platonic energy, or that I know I have, or that the world has let me know I have, I just want to share it on every way so I don't come off simple. Picture what I had to go through as a child and a young person and through my lineage to really understand, to really have the kind of understanding and the capacity I have to endure and to study and to hold. And once I understood that, life changed for me. It really told me I could get through anything. Like anything. And I'm not jinxing myself, but I'm built strong. So I'm just, just look at your chart in that way. And how your parents has aspected your energy. Where's the positives and where's the negatives of that? Even if it's in places that energies like you would feel like are so positive, like heavy Leo and heavy Taurus, always look at the opposition. A lot of heavy Leo is going to have heavy Aquarius. So there could be something here going on with identity and being enmeshed. So even though it's very positive, it could be in spaces where you now take on this identity issues, being enmeshed with your partners because you see it in your parents' relationship. And while you hated it, you're doing the same thing. And just opening up more of knowing their story and seeing how it connects to your story, it does wonders. Wonders. So guys, thank you for doing this, video with me. I thought I was doing a session. Thank you for doing the session with me. I'm so appreciative. But thank you guys for all the support, all the gratitude, all the love. You guys are awesome. I will continue to study. I will continue to stay on my A game. And I'll see y'all on the other side. Love y'all.